Hello and welcome to this special interview series on women and wellness. I'm Wanda Malhotra, lifestyle journalist and CEO of Crunchy Mama Box, a platform promoting conscious living. Today's interview is part of a powerful collaboration with Authority Magazine, a medium publication that delves deep into topics that truly matter. Today, we will have the pleasure of speaking with Nitika Chopra, the visionary behind Chronicon, a media and events conglomerate empowering individuals with chronic illnesses. Diagnosed with psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis, Nitika turned her health journey into change. Since 2010, she's achieved milestones, including hosting the Naturally Beautiful talk show and organizing over 40 transformative events. A respected influencer, Nitika collaborates with hundreds of wellness brands and advocates for those with chronic illnesses. In 2019, she introduced Chronicon, now an online community, app, and Thriving Together podcast, offering inspiration for the global chronic illness community. Now, join us for an exclusive interview with Nitika Chopra. Hi, Nitika. Thank you so much for doing this with us.
Oh, I'm so honored to be here with you, Wanda. Thanks for having me.
Our readers would love to know you better. So, can you share your backstory with us?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you touched on it a little bit in the bio, but basically, I got, diagnosed with a chronic illness when I was 10 years old. I got psoriasis and then ended up getting psoriatic arthritis at 19 and just been through a lot of health stuff my whole life. And I guess like somewhere along the way, I was like, there has to be a purpose behind this. There has to be a reason. At least that's what I want to believe. I know that's not always empowering for everyone. People have different relationships to that kind of a conversation, but it got so dark at times. I just had to, it really helped me to believe that there was something bigger than just my suffering going on here. And so that led me to start my career as an entrepreneur and in the wellness industry about 14 years ago now, actually. So, yeah, and I've been doing that ever since and founded Chronicon just a little while ago, I guess almost 4 years ago now.
Amazing. Love that you changed something that people could see as a negative into a positive and helping so many people. Just beautiful. I love it. So, can you share the most interesting story that happened to you since you started your career? What were the main lessons or takeaways from that story?
Wow, the most interesting story. I mean, there's so many stories. I think one that just popped into my mind was actually how I got my job on QVC. It was with this amazing skincare brand called Fresh. And I had been a fan of Fresh my whole life, like just loved their products. And I guess before, it became popular for brands to be on Instagram. We didn't even have Instagram back then, really. I think it had just started. It was a while ago. And yeah, before it became popular for all these brand stories to be online and all that kind of stuff, I didn't really ever think about who the founder of Fresh was. I just loved the products. And it turned out that the founder ended up getting booked to be a guest on my talk show, and my talk show Naturally Beautiful at the time. And I was like, you're the founder of Fresh? Like, this is so wild. I've loved this brand. Like, I am your biggest fan. I spend way too much money on your products. And we became good friends, actually, like genuine good friends. And we would see each other. It was very, very busy. Lev Glasman is his name. And his partner, Alina, is also the co-founder. And so but I met Lev, and we would, hang out every once in a while, and we'd always find time for dinner and things like that. And one night we were hanging out, and he was just telling me like how much goes into doing a job like being on QVC and how much the brand has to do. And it's a wonderful opportunity, which he also obviously said, but he was just saying with everything else he's got going on, there's so much that, goes into it. And they were looking for a really great on-camera person to like represent the brand and do this as, do their QVC spots. And I just looked at him and was like, you should just hire me to do it. And I always think about that because I feel like there was a certain level of confidence that I had at that age that, I kind of marvel at now. And my confidence is different now. It's not like I don't have any confidence, but it's just different, and at that age, I just feel like I was constantly putting myself out there. I was constantly declaring what I wanted, going for it, just really just kind of not stopping to think a lot of times, which sometimes wasn't a good thing, but in this case it was. And he ended up hiring me like within the next month, I think it was, to be his spokesperson for QVC. And it was really the thing I've learned from that is that, I was standing right in front of him and he loved me and he loved, what I did on TV, and he had nothing but wonderful things to say about my work, but it just didn't click for him. So sometimes you have to say it out loud and you have to remind people, no, that's actually something I would love to do. And so I think about that a lot because I feel like it can be really uncomfortable to say it out loud and to be like, I would do that, or why don't you hire me to do that? Because you could get rejected, which has also happened many times. But yeah, that time it worked out and it was really great.
Such a fantastic story. I mean, how many people would think to, you know, blurt out what they would like to do, and sometimes you don't say it and you lose that opportunity. It's like, just say it. Like you said, say it out loud. I love that story. Wow, Nitika, I'm sure a lot of people are going to build up some confidence with that story you just told.
I hope
So,
so.
yeah, it has been said that our mistakes can be our greatest teachers. Can you share a story about a mistake you made when you were first starting? And can you tell us what lesson you learned from that?
Oh my gosh, I've made so many mistakes. And I actually don't even know that even hearing the word mistake, it's funny. I don't even know that I really relate to the things I'm thinking about like a mistake. I think there have been times, the first thing that comes to mind is like there was this friend that would invite me out to a lot of different industry parties. And, she had a great network. This was many years ago. This was like maybe 14 years ago, like right when I was starting out. And she was very, very well connected. She had a lot of industry connections and she would have all these parties and all these different things. And I was so, again, so unapologetic about, what I wanted. And oh my God, I wanted to have my own talk show and I didn't have one yet and all these things. So I was constantly pushing for that and putting that out there. And I didn't have the best boundaries with it. At times it was like there's that line, right? That line between I'm going to really own what I'm here to do and I'm going to really honor that I'm here to do something really beautiful and that matters and that I love at least and hope other people resonate. But I don't have to force it, And so I would go to all of her events and all of her parties, and I would just be aggressive with like connecting with people and like, oh my God, I think this, and it sounds so like you're using people or like manipulative or something. That's not at all how I felt about it. I was just so new to the game. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't understand like the power of grace and the power of, waiting and giving things time. Now, so many years later, I can see, oh my gosh, there's so many things where I will see somebody at an event or I'll connect with someone and I will be like, oh my God, I wish I could just like get into it with that person and like tell them everything I'm doing. And I want them to know, and I want them to hire me for this thing, or I want them to sponsor Chronicon or whatever it might be. And I have to just remember that I can't force it. Not only can you not lose what is meant for you, like you hear so often, but I also really think you cannot force things that are not meant for you. And if you try, it will be a disaster, is like what I've really learned. And so I think I wouldn't say it's a mistake, but it's like a lesson I had to learn, and she totally called me out on it too, by the way. That's how I learned the lesson. She was like, what are you doing? was like, what? This is weird? I didn't know. And she was like, yeah, it's very weird. Like, cut it out, you know? And I mean, the good thing is I learn when people tell me things. I want to know when I'm being a weirdo. So I, I learned from it. But yeah, that was a lesson for sure.
But you are so right about mistakes being lessons. That's what mistakes are, lessons. So we can't be afraid of making a mistake, or like you said, your friend told you, don't do it. And then you realized, oh, okay, maybe I should change my approach and let things flow naturally. And they did. They did, because look at you. Look at you now, right?
I'm not as awkward. I'm still pretty awkward, but not for the same reasons when I meet people.
I didn't mean to say awkward. I mean to say, look at you, how successful you
No,
are
no,
right
I
now.
said awkward. I know you didn't say awkward. I called myself awkward. Don't worry. Don't worry.
Oh, you are awesome. So let's jump into our main focus. When it comes to health and wellness, how is the work you are doing helping to make a bigger impact in the world? We know, but tell us more.
Sure. I mean, when I started Chronicon, I guess it's been over 4 years now. Earlier I said almost 4 years ago, but I guess it's been over 4 years. Um, I really set out on a mission around showing people that they have the opportunity to thrive while living with a chronic condition. And I actually think, we've achieved that in so many ways. I think we have so much more work that I'm excited to do, but we have definitely achieved a large amount of that in terms of what we've been trying to show people. So, I mean, how is the work? What was the question? How has the work been impactful? I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. You don't have to cut that out, but I lost my train.
When it comes, no, it's how is the work you are doing helping to make a bigger impact in the
Okay.
world?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think what I learned growing up with all of these different chronic conditions is that I was sort of shown two avenues that you can take. This was my experience, that you either are really in your suffering around what you're going through, which I definitely was. I got my first chronic illness when I was 10 years old. It became my entire identity. It was debilitating, and it was also extremely physical. So I was covered from the tip of my head to the tip of my foot with large, scaly, itchy, red, flaky patches of psoriasis that would bleed, that would shed. It was aggressive, and it was undeniable in every moment, and even when I was sleeping, because I would scratch so much that I would wake up with blood on my sheets because of how much I would scratch. I wouldn't be able to stop it during the night. So it was what I knew about myself for a very long time. All I knew was that I was someone who was sick. I didn't know anything else about myself. And then I discovered self help. I discovered, manifestation, talking about, I've always been very spiritual. I've always been very connected to God in my own personal way, not in necessarily religious ways. But beyond that, I didn't know about this whole self help world. And so when I learned about self help, I was like, oh, that's like the other way. So you kind of make sure everything's positive all the time. You can't think anything negative. You just have to like be sure that everything's, straight and narrow. And if you just do that, you'll be happy. And apparently your disease will go away and everything's going to be fine. And that was a different kind of hell, to be honest with you, because it was like not sustainable and it was not realistic, right? So I've been setting out to show people that there's a third way. There's this way of owning when you have a bad day, owning when you're having a flare up, when you're itching, when you're having pain, when whatever it might be for you. And it's not only about chronic illness, that's a lot of what I talk about, but I've also been through a lot of other things that have nothing to do with my health. So it can be when you're just, not having an easy time and really feeling defeated. And, owning that, but then knowing that you have this next moment to choose a higher thought, choose to focus on something that you love about yourself. Or if you can't think of anything, think of your best friend and think of one thing you love about that person, So I kind of want to talk to people about that third door. And I do think that that is helping people create this sense of self empowerment, doing it for themselves, right? And showing themselves that they have that strength within them. And I've seen so many lives transform because of it, which has been really rewarding.
Wow, very, very empowering. I love that. So, can you share 5 lifestyle tweaks that you believe will help support people's journey towards a better well being? And please give an example or a story for each.
Sure. 5. Wow. Okay, let's see. Let's see if I can come up with 5 on the top of my head. Well, the first thing I will say is something I shared this morning on my Instagram, which is like how I start my day. I do think that really matters. It's so cliche, and I know we've like heard it so many times before, probably, but not only does it matter, but I also think it's important to allow for that to evolve over time. And that was something I was kind of trying to get at when I shared this on Instagram. I've always cared how I wake up in the morning. I've always felt like it's the time to sort of check in with my body and like do so many things for myself. But my morning has really changed over the years. Even just in this last year, I've spent a lot of time carving out like the sacredness of the morning for me. And I just have different requirements for my morning that I didn't really have before. So I think taking the time to figure out what those requirements are for you, if you could create it anyway, and you didn't have to worry, like one of the things I ended up doing was I said, I don't want people to call me before 10 a.m. And I have this one friend who one of the only times we ever talk is at like 8:30 in the morning. Because she's like taking her son to school and like whatever. And I was really afraid to tell her that this is what I really feel. And it's fine. It's like, it's totally fine. Sometimes I compromise because I have extra energy or I don't have any meetings right after, so I can kind of readjust my day. But for the most part, we just don't talk before 10 a.m., which has been great. So that's one thing I would say. I also do think that making like self learning a part of your daily experience is, I think, more important than people realize. Like, there's a lot of this, like, therapy is so great if you can afford it. I highly recommend it, all those things. But there, again, going back to the self, what are you doing for yourself in every moment? I've been going through so much with my health. I've been really trying to organize, what I want for my life and like really wanting to follow my dreams and all these things. So I have to then get to work on that, right? And one part is the actual thing that I want, but the other part is who am I in the process of creating this for myself and my life. And I have really gotten into the habit of listening to a lot of spiritual books, listening to a lot of podcasts or teachings where I'm like, okay, this is, even if it's only for like a few minutes in the morning, it's getting me into that mindset of remembering why I'm really here in this work and on this planet. It's getting me out of my ego of comparing and looking around. It's just really repositioning the way I'm thinking about things. And I don't think enough people do that. I think a lot of people do that when they're in crisis. But I think it's important just to have that be a daily thing that you do. I also think that finding like things that you love to do outside of work, especially if you're in work that is more service oriented, where you're really giving like your heart and soul to the work that you're doing. And obviously, that's how I feel about my work. I love what I do. I could just genuinely work all day, every day, and I would never get tired of it. And at the same time, in the last year or so, I've had to have like an honest conversation with myself about the type of woman I want to be and what I would tell a friend if they were just working nonstop to the ground, and burning themselves out. It's not sustainable and it's not actually very kind to yourself. And then inherently, it will not be kind to the people that you're trying to support either. Because you'll start to resent it. I never got to that place, thank goodness, but I could see how that would happen, if you wear yourself out that much. So I had to find hobbies. I love to bake. It's like a new hobby of mine. And I've been really enjoying it. And it's like a thing that I think about throughout the week. And I'll invite a friend over to bake something with me. And I got like a cake decorating kit. And I'm like trying all these things. It's so silly. No one cares. And a lot of the stuff I make is good. And a lot of the stuff is not. So it's just, it's just for fun. But it gets me into like a different mindset. And then I would say, of course, like community, I think is just the cornerstone for everything. We have a beautiful community globally through our app at Chronicon, which I'm so proud of. And to be honest, it's been a huge support for me because when I was going through, I went through a lot of health stuff in 2022, 2023. And when I was going through all of that, they were sort of the first people that I really told about it outside of my immediate circle. They were the first people, they were the people that really got what I was going through on a level that was really it was really important for me. So I think finding those communities that are going to get you in a way that takes away the burden of having to explain yourself, I think is just huge. And of course, the more people you can have like that in real life, in your inner circle, the better. And then I think the fifth one, what was the exact question though? I want to make sure I'm answering it right. It was 5 things for
Lifestyle tweaks that you believe would help support people's journey towards better well-being. And I think you answered this pretty well. Like if you
I
don't
feel like I
get to the fifth, but if you want to,
I gave for it. I have one more. I just wanted to make sure it made sense. But I would say the fifth one for me, this is gonna sound so silly, but I really think skincare is like the key to all things holy. Like I just think it is just, and listen, not everybody has to be so into skincare, especially not for like physical change perspective. Like that's not what I'm saying. I just really feel, even if it's like a lotion that you really like, or a body oil, or, to be honest, even like a spray that smells like really good. But for me, I've really found like a, a really extensive skincare routine and, lotions and creams and all that kind of stuff just to be so healing. And I know I have psoriasis. So for so long, I just felt like I wasn't invited to the skincare conversation. And I think a lot of people, even if they don't have a skin disease, feel that way for different reasons. And so I just think it can be very healing because it allows us to connect with our bodies in a way that can feel safe. It doesn't have to be about what other people think. It's really just about that moment that you're putting on something that feels good. Okay, I think that's 5 things.
I like that. It's self-care, right?
Yeah.
Totally. So if you could start a movement that would bring the most amount of wellness to the most amount of people, what would that be? I think you already started.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think I started that. Yeah, I mean, what I'm doing with Chronicon is definitely the answer to that. Almost half the population of the United States is chronically ill, and that is a huge number. It's over 133 million Americans, and that's the number that we know of. That's not even since the pandemic; they've not updated that number, so it's grown in an extraordinary amount since then. And I think that if we can liberate people who are dealing with their bodies in that way, it can change the world, right? Because that is that many people. Like it's not a small amount of human beings. So yeah. So what I'm doing with Chronicon, I think would be the answer.
I totally agree. I love what you're doing with Chronicon. It's just amazing.
Thank you.
So, what are the 5 things I wish someone told me before I started and why? Your 5 things.
Okay, we're loving the number 5 today. Let me see. Okay, I'll try to make these answers shorter. I think the thing about grace, just like giving things time. We hear it so often now that what is meant for you will not pass you, but I think I just really didn't get that growing up and when I first started my business. Um, I think understanding that uh not everyone's going to like you is really humbling. And I think it's important, I do. And I think it's something that so many of us can shy away from. Because at least I can speak for myself. I just like really wanted people to like me. And it's a normal thing, I think. But it's actually been kind of liberating to own that I'm not going to be for everybody. And then I can just move on and spend time with the people that are going to be for me. I also think focus on your side of the street has been a huge thing for me. I, it's so easy to feel victimized or feel like, oh, this person should have done this, or why didn't they say that, or whatever it is. And it's just, yeah, okay, maybe that's true. And I think as I've gotten older, just even in the last like recent years, I've tried to spend more time being like, okay, I get that you're hurt, but like, what was your part in all of that to myself? And it's actually been really helpful to do that because it takes you out of the victim place, right? It takes you to that place of like, okay, I didn't do that on purpose. I wish I wouldn't have done that now that I can kind of see that this was like a weird pattern that I had or something I don't love. But okay, I can do something with that. Next time I meet somebody, I can say, "Oh, I'm not going to do that same thing." Um, so I think that's something. I also think something around like moving my body more. I think would have been really helpful to learn at an earlier age. I now find movement to be really just very healing and supportive. But because I grew up with so many challenges physically, it just was like the last thing that I thought about or wanted anything to do with. And yeah, I think it's like a skill that's important to incorporate, whatever that means for you. Some days it means it looks totally different than other days, and I think harnessing what that can mean for you is really important and helps with every area of life. Is that 4? I think that was 4. Is that 5?
I don't know, but it's okay.
Okay.
You don't have to do 5.
Okay. I think that's what I want to share from that.
Great. That's wonderful. I loved it. So, sustainability, veganism, mental health, and environmental changes are big topics at the moment. Which one of these causes is dearest to you and why?
Sustainability
Veganism,
is
mental health, and environmental changes.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're all important. In terms of like the one that kind of stands out the most to me as resonating is around mental health. I think it's something that affects way more people than we realize. I think even for me, I've never been diagnosed with a mental health condition, but I've had a therapist for a long time where we sort of know like what my baseline is, what when I'm dipping, and then like what usually why is it that I'm dipping and that I'm getting into like a different territory. And that's been really helpful for me because I can kind of track that and keep on top of it. But those out there who are struggling with, real mental health challenges, severe anxiety, depression, even things like OCD, there's so much bipolar that is now coming out with people. I think I might know people who are bipolar that are undiagnosed. Like there's just so much happening with folks with their mental health. And there's a lot of stigma that has been just carried like down from generation to generation to generation that I think we're breaking a lot more. I think we've gotten so far, but we still have a long way to go, and I'd love for therapy to be free. It should be covered for everyone. You should not only need you should not only be able to go to therapy if you are like rich and, you know, can afford it. And I am not rich. And I mean, I found a therapist that did like a sliding scale and, you know, but that's like a rare thing, you know, to find. So yeah. So I think if we could get to the mental health aspect of folks, I think we could actually heal a lot of these other issues.
I agree 100% with you. Mental health is so important, and I wish there were more free treatments, so much more. This is one of the movements I would love to start as well.
Yeah.
So, what is the best way for our readers to further follow your work online?
Sure. You can go to my Instagram, which is at Nitika Chopra, and also at Chronicon Official. And yeah, you can follow me there. I'm updating my Nitika Chopra website. So soon, nitikachopra.com will be a good hub. And also follow my podcast, Thriving Together, on like Spotify or Apple, wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Perfect. Thank you so much for these fantastic insights, Nitika. We wish you continued success and good health. Your work is amazing, and I will continue to follow you online.
Thank you, Wanda.